The fine was taped to my front door like a scarlet letter. Bold red print across the top. HOA violation, immediate action required. I didn't even have to open the envelope to know who was behind it. Linda Zimmer, HOA president, part-time menace to society and full-time busybody. She had a voice like a whistle and a haircut that could slice drywall. I peeled it off the door and read aloud to myself, "Unauthorized animal on the community dock. Violation of Section 3.2.1, no pets allowed on common property. Fine, $250. I blinked. You've got to be kidding me. The unauthorized animal was a guest's dog. Not just any dog, this was Titan, a black German shepherd with a bulletproof vest and a badge sewn onto it. He was a K-9, part of a private security detail assigned to my friend Leo, who was visiting for the week. Leo runs executive protection services, and they were staying with me while securing a client's event nearby. I called Leo. "Hey, you're not gonna believe this. Linda fined me for Titan being on the dock." Leo laughed. "The K-9 with the security tags. Are they blind or just stupid?" "Oh, Linda's not blind. She's just power drunk." That afternoon, I spotted Linda patrolling the lakefront like she was auditioning for a reboot of Baywatch, HOA edition. She had her little clipboard, a sun visor, and that permanently pinched expression that said, "I hate joy." I walked over, fine in hand. "Linda," I said, keeping my tone even, "you fined me over a working K-9. He had credentials, vest, ID tag, the works." She didn't even blink. "No dogs are allowed on the dock. Rules are rules, Kellan. Even when they're on active duty," she folded her arms. "Unless he's a certified service animal, he's considered a pet, and pets are not allowed." "You do realize you're penalizing a trained security dog doing his job," Linda sniffed. "We run a tight ship here. If we let one dog on the dock, next thing you know, we'll have mutts everywhere." I stepped closer. "He's not a mutt. He's a K-9, Linda. You're enforcing a rule that doesn't even apply." "Well, you can appeal it at next month's meeting," she said, turning to walk away. Right, the infamous HOA meetings. 3 hours of Linda talking over people until they either gave up or moved out. But not me. Not this time. I spent the next 2 hours gathering every shred of documentation I could find. I printed Titan's K-9 security ID, Leo's private security license, and a copy of the state law defining working dogs. I even pulled up the HOA's own rulebook and highlighted the clause stating that working animals were exempt from pet restrictions. Next morning, Leo emailed me a signed letter from the security firm verifying Titan's status and assignment. The letterhead alone looked more official than anything our HOA had ever produced. I had one last thing to do: check the dock's security cameras. See, what Linda didn't know was that I helped install them last year, and I also knew how to access the footage. What I found wasn't just helpful, it was gold. There she was. Linda, standing at the edge of the dock, taking pictures of Titan from behind a bush. She wasn't even subtle. She snapped the photos, zoomed in, and then strutted off like she'd just solved a murder. I downloaded the whole thing onto a flash drive and smiled. This wasn't just about a dog anymore. This was about Linda Zimmer abusing power and targeting people for no good reason. And I was about to bury her in her own rulebook. The HOA meeting was set for Thursday night, held in the clubhouse that smelled faintly of lemon-scented floor wax and disappointment. I arrived early, not because I was eager, but because I wanted a seat in the front row close enough to watch Linda sweat when the time came. I wasn't alone. Leo showed up in a pressed blazer, clean-shaven and carrying a briefcase that looked like it had seen federal courtrooms. He wasn't just supporting me, he was ready to testify if needed. The room filled quickly. Residents trickled in holding paper plates of stale cookies and lukewarm coffee. Most came for the free snacks and gossip, but a few, like the retired teacher couple from Sycamore Court and the single dad from Cedar Bay, had been on the receiving end of Linda's overreach before. They nodded to me as they took their seats. They knew something was coming. Linda walked in 5 minutes late. Her blazer was buttoned to the throat, and her hair was pinned so tight it looked painful. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on Leo for half a second before darting away. She cleared her throat. Let's begin with violations and fines. First item, property 47A, unauthorized animal on community dock. Fine stands at $250. Do the homeowners wish to contest? I stood. Yes, we absolutely do, Linda gestured to the corner. Take the floor. I walked to the front, flash drive in one hand, folder in the other. Leo followed, setting his briefcase on the table with a quiet thud. The projector was already plugged in, and I inserted the flash drive with a steady hand. Before I begin, I said, I want to make clear that this is not just about a fine. It's about due process, abuse of authority, and the bending of rules to suit personal vendettas. A few heads turned. Someone in the back murmured, finally. I clicked on the first image, a still frame of Titan in his vest standing alert beside Leo on the dock. The timestamp, the security badge, and the vest insignia were all clearly visible. This, I said, pointing, is the supposed unauthorized animal. He is not a pet. He is a working K-9 assigned to a licensed security firm performing a contracted duty. Here is the verification letter from that firm. Leo stepped forward and handed it to the secretary, bypassing Linda entirely. I clicked to the next slide, footage of Linda creeping behind a hedge, snapping photos like a tabloid photographer. The room let out a collective gasp, followed by a few stifled laughs. This is how the evidence was gathered, not through community complaint, not through legitimate observation, but through personal stalking and entrapment. The footage speaks for itself. Linda crossed her arms tightly. Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing. I turned to the crowd. Now, according to the HOA bylaws, page 92, Section 7 working animals are explicitly exempt from pet restrictions on common property. That language hasn't changed since the last revision in 2018. I held up a printed copy of the bylaws. Linda, you signed off on this revision yourself. Your initials are here. I stepped back. There is no violation. The fine is invalid, and the conduct leading to it is, frankly, malicious. The room was dead quiet, Leo added. And just for the record, if this fine is enforced, it constitutes obstruction of a contracted security operation. That's a violation of state business regulations, and we're prepared to take this to the county magistrate. Linda finally spoke. This meeting isn't a courtroom. We follow protocol here. A tall man near the back stood up. I recognized him, Mr. Ramirez, who ran the community website. Then maybe it's time we changed protocol. That's the third time this year someone's been fined under gray area rules, and now we have proof of targeting. A woman near the front raised her hand. I had a babysitter's car towed last month because it didn't have a guest tag. Linda said it was suspicious. It was a Honda Civic. Another voice chimed in. My niece was fined for setting up a lemonade stand, said it was unlicensed business activity. The room was shifting. What started as a personal defense had cracked open a dam. Linda tried to regain control. These are isolated incidents. We're here to discuss the matter at hand. I took out one final document. Actually, I'd like to submit a formal motion to audit the HOA's enforcement practices over the last 2 years, including fines, complaint sources, and surveillance activities. I've already spoken to a municipal attorney who confirmed that, under the Sunshine Law, residents have the right to review and challenge enforcement records, especially if they involve potential civil rights violations. That hit its mark. Her eyes flicked to the secretary, who suddenly looked very interested in her pen. Linda's voice was tight. Motion denied. But the room erupted. You don't get to deny a motion unilaterally, Mr. Ramirez shouted. That's not how procedure works. We vote, remember? People began raising their hands. More than half went up. I didn't even need to count. The motion passed before it was even recorded. Linda sat down, pale now, her spine stiff. I added one last thing. Also, just out of curiosity, I FOIA'd the HOA's expenditures from last year. There's a charge for security consultation services for over $5,000. paid to a company that doesn't exist. I've already submitted the paperwork to the county fraud unit. There was complete silence. Then someone in the back, maybe the guy from Willow Bend, let out a low whistle. Leo leaned over and whispered, "That's going to get a visit from someone in uniform." As the meeting adjourned in chaos, I walked out into the cool night air. A few neighbors followed, clapping me on the back, asking for copies of the footage. I told them I'd upload everything to a shared drive. Before I got to my car, the secretary caught up with me. Her voice was low. "I've been keeping records too," she said. "There's more. Fake invoices, backdated notices, even forged signatures. I didn't know what to do with them. Until now." I gave her my number. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the neighborhood group chat had exploded. Screenshots of the footage, quotes from the bylaws, and even memes of Linda behind the bush were circulating. Someone pasted her face onto a cartoon raccoon holding binoculars. It wasn't over. Not yet. But after tonight, Linda Zimmer's reign of unchecked fines and paranoia-driven policy was unraveling. And I was just getting started. 2 days after the meeting, a white sedan with no license plate frame rolled slowly through the neighborhood. It parked across the street from my place, engine idling for a few seconds before a man in his 40s stepped out. He wore khakis, a tucked-in polo, and a badge around his neck. Another man, younger and broader, followed him. They didn't even knock. They waited near the sidewalk, hands at their sides, scanning the homes like they were reading blueprints in their heads. I stepped outside. "You looking for me?" The older one nodded. "Kellan Price?" "That's me. Detective Ralston with the County Financial Crimes Unit." "This is Officer Denton. We're following up on a report made regarding potential misuse of HOA funds. Your name was attached as a witness." I gestured toward the porch. "You want to come inside or—" Ralston shook his head. "Actually, we're headed to the HOA office in about 20 minutes. But we'd appreciate a written statement from you by the end of the day, preferably with the names of any other residents who might have documentation." My neighbor, Mrs. Bell, peeked out from behind her curtains across the street. Word would be out before lunch. I handed them a manila envelope I'd already prepared. "Everything I've got is in here: bylaw excerpts, video capture, spending discrepancies, and the vendor I couldn't verify." Ralston raised an eyebrow. "You did your homework. I don't like being lied to. Especially by an organization that sends me bills." As they walked off, I spotted Linda's car parked in front of the clubhouse. She was leaning over the hood, talking furiously on her phone. When she saw the detectives, her entire stance shifted. She straightened, stepped back, and stuffed her phone into her purse so quickly she nearly dropped it. Ralston didn't even slow down. He approached Linda like they were old acquaintances, speaking softly but firmly. She gestured toward the building with abrupt, jerky motions. They disappeared inside. By that evening, the community message board, usually reserved for yard sales and lost cats, was flooded with updates. Someone had snapped a blurry picture of Ralston inside the clubhouse, flipping through a binder while Denton took photos of the locked filing cabinet. Another resident posted a partial list of HOA expenditures from last year, highlighting a mysterious consulting fee that matched the one I'd found. I didn't post anything. I didn't have to. The truth was moving faster than rumor. At 9 the next morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Tessa, the HOA secretary, holding a heavy binder and a portable hard drive. "I'm not going down with them," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "There's more. A lot more." She dropped the binder on my kitchen table with a thud. "Linda's been contracting her cousin's company, if you can call it that, to do maintenance inspections. They're fake reports, made-up fees, and the kicker. She's been using HOA funds to pay herself back for administrative expenses that were never approved." "How long has this been going on?" "Since at least last spring." That's when she changed the lock on the filing cabinet and started telling me what to type on the meeting minutes. I opened the binder. Dozens of receipts, some handwritten, others printed on letterhead that looked like it had been made with clip art. One page showed the same invoice number used twice on two separate dates. Sloppy, I scanned a few pages. This is enough to get her removed, maybe charged. Tessa nodded. That's not all. I found something else: emails. She was trying to get a new bylaw passed that would give the president emergency authority to override votes during public safety risks. She wanted to push it through during the next meeting. Let me guess. So she could enforce whatever she wanted without a vote. She called it streamlining response protocol. I leaned back in my chair. She's not just power-hungry, she's trying to build a dictatorship out of law and ordinances. Later that day, I met with Mr. Ramirez and a few other residents who'd been quietly collecting their own grievances. We organized a plan, not just to expose Linda, but to initiate a vote for her removal. According to the bylaws, if 30% of homeowners signed a petition, it triggered a special hearing within 14 days. We needed 52 signatures. We got 73 in 2 days. The petition was delivered to the HOA board by certified mail, with a copy hand-delivered to Linda's mailbox. By the following Monday, a notice was posted at the clubhouse. Special session meeting, HOA board review, attendance encouraged. But Linda didn't show up. Instead, her cousin, if that's who he really was, arrived in a black pickup truck, parked out front, and never came inside. He left after 10 minutes, but not before glaring at a few residents and rolling his window up without a word. Nobody approached him. At the meeting, the remaining board members looked rattled. Tessa had already resigned earlier that morning, but she attended as a resident. She brought copies of the email threads, the altered financial reports, and the backup documents from the hard drive. I handed them to Detective Ralston, who sat quietly in the back taking notes. When the motion to remove Linda was brought forward, no one opposed it. Not one vote in her favor. The board declared her suspended until further notice, pending investigation. The clubhouse erupted not in cheers, but in murmurs. A low, cautious sense of relief. That night, I noticed a for sale sign in front of Linda's house. Brand new, with a phone number from a realtor in another county. She didn't answer the door when someone knocked later that week, and her blinds stayed shut day and night. 3 days later, Ralston called me. We executed a search warrant at the HOA office this morning, found documents hidden in the ceiling tiles. Cash envelopes, too. Not much, but enough to raise flags. What's going to happen to her depends on the DA. Fraud, misuse of community funds, possibly tampering with public records. It's not a short list. She's trying to sell her house. Might want to mention that to the civil investigator. If she's liquidating, it could be an attempt to shield assets. The next board meeting had a different tone. For the first time in years, residents spoke without fear of being interrupted. New committees were proposed. A suggestion box was placed near the exit. People volunteered for tasks instead of being volunteered by email threats. Leo came by that weekend before flying out. He handed me a small bottle of bourbon and nodded toward the dock where Titan had once stood. You broke her spine with a rulebook. That's art. I half laughed. Turns out the only thing more effective than a K-9 is a copy of the bylaws and a neighbor with a grudge. He raised the bottle in a toast. To clean docks and cleaner books. I clinked my glass against his and watched the lake ripple under the evening sun. Justice didn't always come with flashing lights or headlines. Sometimes it came with a flash drive, a binder, and a neighborhood that finally decided enough was enough. By the following Friday, the neighborhood had shifted in a way I hadn't seen in the 10 years I'd lived there. The silence that used to hang over community spaces like fog had lifted. People were chatting at mailboxes again, kids were back on their bikes, and no one flinched when they saw someone with a clipboard. But things weren't done. Not yet. Early that morning, a plain cardboard envelope was wedged into my screen door. No return address. Inside was a stack of printouts, email threads, scanned receipts, and a typed list of names. I recognized a few, 3 former board members, all of whom had moved away under strange circumstances over the past 2 years. One email caught my eye immediately. It was from Linda to someone named G. Zimmer, referencing payouts and quiet compliance incentives. My gut dropped. I called Ralston again. 2 hours later, I met him and a county prosecutor named Dana Lively in a windowless room at the municipal building. Dana looked sharp, mid-30s, with a tone that didn't waste time. "We've confirmed the name," she said, flipping through the documents. "Gregory Zimmer. Linda's brother. He owns a shell company registered to a P.O. box in another district. It's the same company that received over $15,000 in HOA funds last year under General Services." I leaned forward. So the cousin story was fake. Completely. "And that's not the worst part," she said, sliding a stapled packet toward me. "We pulled the HOA's tax filings and compared them to the bank records we subpoenaed. 2 of the checks withdrawn from the HOA's operating account were cashed in person at a credit union in Linda's name. She forged co-signatures." Ralston added, "Forgery's just the start. Misappropriation of community funds, wire fraud if she used electronic transfers, and possibly tax evasion. Lively's office is preparing charges." I shook my head slowly. "How far does this go?" Dana didn't blink. "Far enough that we're bringing in a forensic accountant. We think this wasn't just about fines and fake invoices. There's evidence she suppressed homeowner complaints from being logged and altered meeting minutes to cover unauthorized votes. And the vote override clause she was trying to pass," Ralston nodded. "That would have given her unchecked power to authorize spending without board approval. She knew what she was doing." The prosecutor slid a final file across the table. "We also found a non-disclosure agreement she tried to get a resident to sign last year after a dispute. She offered a waived fine in exchange for silence. That's coercion." I pushed the file away. "So what happens now?" "She'll be indicted within the week," Dana said. "We're freezing the HOA's discretionary fund to prevent asset drain, and we'll be issuing subpoenas to anyone tied directly to the payments." That afternoon, a patrol car parked in front of Linda's house. No sirens, no noise. Just 2 officers in dark uniforms walking up her front steps, one carrying a clipboard, the other a canvas evidence bag. She opened the door, tried to close it immediately, and failed. The officers stepped inside. She didn't come out again. Word spread fast. By dusk, the for sale sign was gone. So was her car. The next morning, the HOA board posted a public notice. "Effective immediately. Linda Zimmer has been removed from all positions pending legal proceedings. Interim leadership to be determined at emergency session." I didn't attend that one. Instead, I met with Tessa and Mr. Ramirez in my backyard. They brought lawn chairs and a box of files they'd pulled from the office before the locks were changed. Tessa placed a yellow folder on the table. "Here's what we still need to address," she said. 3 outstanding fines Linda issued last month, all arbitrary. One was for having a non-compliant mailbox post. The others were for unsightly yard decor and excessive doorbell use. Mr. Ramirez sipped his iced tea. "I saw the doorbell one. The guy had a nurse checking on his wife twice a day. She fined them $50 per visit," Tessa said. "She's going to prison, right?" I asked. Tessa nodded. "Almost certainly, but we've still got to clean up what she left behind." We divided the files. I volunteered to draft a community resolution to nullify any fines issued without board approval. Ramirez agreed to comb through the old meeting minutes to find any decisions that were never properly voted on. Tessa, meanwhile, was building a timeline of every suspicious invoice and overlapping payment. 3 days later, a public hearing was held in the county administrative center. Not just for Linda, 5 others were called in, including Gregory Zimmer and 2 former vendors. Charges ranged from fraud and forgery to obstruction and theft from a public trust. I watched from the back of the courtroom. Linda wore a navy blazer and no makeup, her expression drained of the superiority she used to wear like armor. When the judge read the charges, she stared at the floor. No one from the neighborhood sat near her. Afterward, Dana Lively approached me outside. "She's likely to take a plea. First-time offender, but the amount and intent are serious. we're also pursuing restitution. She'll have to pay it back, every cent we can trace, and with interest if I have my way." That evening, the neighborhood gathered not in the clubhouse but on the open green by the lake. No agenda. No votes, just folding chairs, lemonade pitchers, and a sense of closure that had felt impossible 2 weeks before. Leo called from out of state. I put him on speaker. "I saw the news," he said. "Zimmer indicted, HOA board gutted, and the dock still standing. You guys should throw a barbecue, Mr." Ramirez laughed. "We're already planning one," Tessa added, "and we're creating an oversight committee. No more presidents with unchecked power. From now on, every action's logged and every dollar tracked." Someone from the crowd asked if we'd ever heard from the resident with the nurse. I raised my hand. "I spoke to him yesterday. His wife's doing better, they're staying. Said they finally feel like the neighborhood is worth being part of again." The group fell quiet for a moment, then someone clapped, more followed. As the sun set over the lake, I walked back toward the dock. The same place where all this began. Titan had stood right here doing his job while Linda hid in a bush and plotted fines. Now she was facing real consequences, and the rest of us. We had our neighborhood back, not perfect, but honest. That was enough.